Tonight it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Violaine Anger to St. John's College. Dr. Anger received her doctorate in French literature from the Paris 8 University, writing on music and language in France from Rousseau to Mallarmé. She has also earned degrees in modern literature, philosophy, and information and media management, in addition to extensive study at the Conservatoire National Supérieur de Musique de Paris. Professor Anger is currently a senior lecturer at the University of Ivry-Val-d'Essonne and the École Polytechnique. After working extensively on 19th century musical expression, she has recently focused on the development of staff notation in the 9th century. Dr. Anger is also a member of and a teacher at the School of the Gregorian Choir of Paris, performing with the choir at their concert at St. John's last October, as some of you may remember. Her lecture tonight is entitled "The Very First Musical Writing Online and the Origins of Polyphony." Please join me in welcoming Dr. Anger to St. John's.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a great joy and a great honor for me to be here, to come and to speak. And I would like to thank you warmly for your trust and for your interest. I have really many things to say, and I won't say everything. I would like just to raise your appetite and to give you a sense of what we'll talk tonight is important. I hope I will raise your appetite, yes. What we will speak of has to do with the epistemological shift introduced by Christianity into the knowledge, not only in music, but into the knowledge. And so we are going to speak about this. This, Alleluia. And so it's the same manuscript, another manuscript, but for the same example, Alleluia. So we are going to speak of this. It's the first time that lines are used to visually analyze chant. It's the first time we find a notation system that allows it to precisely read the pitch of sounds. It's the first time we find an explication of the learned polyphonic practice, that is, the conscious superposition of melodic lines in a consonant measured way. And it sets in place things that seems obvious for us, but that are not obvious, and they were built at the time. So this can be found in two anonymous treatises, the Musica Enchiriadis and the Scholica Enchiriadis. The word Enchiriadis is Greek, and it means manual or handbook. So it means handbook of music, handbook of scholarly discipline. And so they were written at the end of the 9th century, somewhere north of Paris, within the influence of the Palatine school, so the influence of the imperial school, which was in Laon. You pronounce this Laon, L-A-O-N, Laon with a nose. And it's somewhere here. You know, Paris is here, and it's somewhere 2 days by horse from Paris, somewhere like that. And you know, I know Rex Celestis Domine. Excelestis Domine, you know that. I know because I know that you sung it. I heard you singing it. So this belongs to this kind of, to these manuscripts. And it is the missing link between Ptolemeus that you know and perhaps the Kepler question of harmony of spheres and harmony of music that I know you know. And it's also perhaps the missing link between Boethius and between the Greek theory of music and the notation, the Western notation theory. So practice. So this is so important. So we are in Laon, somewhere in the north of Paris, and Laon is something very special because it's a natural fortress. A natural fortress, even today, that's a picture of today, a place that is very impressive, and it overlooks a flat, open countryside for miles, with a magnificent view, and you can imagine that they viewed also the cosmos at the night, and they viewed the stars and so on. And there is a Gothic cathedral nowadays, which was built in the 13th century. So try to forget about it. It's a stronghold residence of the French kings. And at the time of Charles the Bold is the grandson of Charlemagne. You may have heard of him. Who would become emperor of the West countries at the end of his life, so at the end of the 9th century. And there was a famous school there. There were Irish scholars. And among them, Laon was located in a pilgrimage route from Canterbury to Rome. And there was a small community of Irish scholars who lived there, and at the time, some of the best minds of the Western countries. And in particular, John Scotus Eriugena, who is the great thinker of the time. And there is still nowadays in Laon the street of the Scots, Rue des Irlandais, which is here, which preserves the memory of the Irish colony there. They were lay people, and that's important. They were not monks. And right next to them, so you have the Rue des Irlandais here. Right next to them was a sort of small abbey, a small convent. It's not an abbey, a moutier of women, with a secular seat of power. So in this abbey, they copied manuscript and very scholarly important manuscripts. There were women, and the royal castle is here. So you see a bit of the places. And on the time, the royal king was Charles the Bold. Charles the Bold, this is the Charles the Bold. And so it is highly likely that a ritual acclamation called the Laudes Imperiales for the king were sung in Laon, of which we have the details. An American writer called Ernest Kantorowicz has written over this. These are litanies. They are perfectly suited to procession. So a cantor intones, and the crowd responds, and the melody is very simple. Kyrie eleison, and the answer, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, Christe audinos, Christe exaudinos, Pater de Celi, Deus miserere nobis. Shall we try? I do the beginning, and you answer, and we are in a procession. So going upwards to the castle of Charles the Bold. Charles the Bold is on his horse. Somebody sings, and we sing together. So I begin. Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, Christe audinos, Christe exaudinos, Pater de celi Deus miserere nobis, Filii Redemptor mundi Deus miserere nobis. Sorry, Filii Redemptor mundi Deus miserere nobis. Spiritus Sancte Deus miserere nobis. Sancta Trinitas unus Deus miserere nobis. Well, you see, we could last quite a long time, and you can imagine the people gathering and shouting and saying this, chanting this. So it is Christian, it is liturgical, but it's for the king. It's not for the church, and it's important for us. So I comment notation on lines, and so the very first example is Alleluia. Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. And so notations on lines allow them to precisely note the pitch. It's the first time, so I can sing it. And they will write polyphony. So these are other examples of the same other manuscripts. Alleluia, Alleluia. And you see the difference. And they can write with this system polyphony. We will speak more of that in a few moments. And so in two voices, we can have, with this notation and in this treatise, much more ambitious configurations. So this is polyphony. We will commit later. But you see, in those treatises, we can find also polyphony with four voices together, and it is precisely written. So I will explain this first. Precisely written, that is the Dacian notation, so the signs that are here. And so I'll explain. The first step to understand the succession the first step to this notation is to understand the succession of whole tone and half tone. So this needs to be cognitively integrated. You don't have to read it, you don't have to measure it. You try to do to do so, we just have to start with melody we already know by heart, and to practice hearing the interval in the melody we already know. So we need to create a mental sonic image of the interval. So the half tone does not need to be calculated, and you know that it's irrational. It is, as they say, not full. It is not complete, not non plenus, and that's enough. So you have one interval and something that is a bit of the interval, and you have to integrate it. And then you have to integrate the tetrachord. So tone, half tone, and tone. So you have thus 4 notes. Yes, tone, so half tone, tone, have you it? So for us, for you, perhaps for me, re, mi, fa, sol. I don't know how you, for you perhaps D, E, F, G, yes, something like that. So shall we do it? D, D, fa, D, D, D. So you have tone, half tone, and a tetrachord, and this is the basis of everything. So you don't have to know something about proportion, over numbers, over everything like that. You start from your experience and your singing experience, and that's a great shift. The Greek, Boëthius, who transmitted the Greek theory, start from a string. You know that, I know that you know that, a string with proportion. The proportion of string that can be measured. They start from an interval, so from a gap. A gap, the tone, it's a gap. Not from the exact proportion of prime numbers. And they start from a mental image constructed with this gap, and not from the production of a sound on a string. That's very important. You have it in your mind. And they start from a sound that is considered as continuous and not from a discontinuous sound arising only from the meeting of ratio between simple integers. Everything beyond, when you read Boëthius or older theories, you have the numbers, and everything beyond the numbers is chaos. Okay, so the sound is discontinuous. They start from a continuous sound, and the half tone is thus non plenus. Yes? And so they invent an internal intrinsic to sound that does not depend on measure, on objective measure. That does not depend on an object that produces sounds that can then be measured. And now writing. Yes, they start from the experience, they start from a continuous sound, they start from an interval, the tone, they start from a mental image, and they invent a measure intrinsic to sound that does not depend on an object that produces sounds and which can be measured. Sorry for that. And then they invent signs to do this. What kind of signs? To write is to make a choice of render visible speech, and then render visible sound. That is something that is not visible. And first, so they invent precise signs for pitch, which they call Dasean. Dasean, it comes from a Greek word meaning breath, and it all rests on the breath ha, h, and half of ha is semi-Dasean, or a T called in the treatises to yeshens, T lying. You see, it's half of the tone, which the talk. So with this, they invent 4 signs that corresponds to the 4 notes of the interval. So you have the 4 signs here, and so how do they do? You have the to yeshens. You put an S at the head, or a C, half a C. Yes? So with S or half a C. And half a C, so 2 half Cs are 1 S. Okay? Yes, so it's 1 sign, in fact. That is what we have to understand. And half tone, the half tone is here. The half tone is given with another sign they call an E, and I will come back to it. So these signs come from H and T, which are the bases, and to them are added S or C. C is 2 half of C gives an S, and so these signs are combined to one another. 2 C's form an S. The E is a simplified to, T, and immediately we have the idea that these letters, that they refer to as Dacian letters, have some kind of an iconic dimension, making their position in relation to each other in the tetrachord. There is an order that is iconic. It's not only a letter, it's not like the alphabet ABCD. The form of the letters can be, has nothing to do with the sound that is pronounced. Here, there is an iconic value of the signs. And so we find the other notes that move up and down the tetrachord, they just turn them in a way, switch them in a way, and the last 2 are horizontal. And so you have the whole scale, and the E for the half tone becomes, for instance here, transfixus. So here is the E has other forms. And so it's a logic of self-generation, a sound that is self-generated, a sound that is, self-generated. And so it highlights the 5th. And you see the colors here. It highlights the 5th. The 5th are always the beginning of a new series. So it's very useful for the Gregorian repertoire, which is their repertoire, because at the 5th we start again. And this, they call it companion, sound companion, compares in Latin. And this is the beginning of the idea that, for instance, a C at the octave is called a C. It's the beginning. The Greek would not have fallen into that idea, because the octave is 1/2, and 1/2 and 1 is not the same. But in this circular and self-generated sounds, the 5th, the signs of the 5th corresponds to each other. So you see immediately where you are in the tetrachord. When you are used to it, you see immediately where you are in the tetrachord with the sign. Yes? So you can immediately see the problem. Once you have understood how it works, you can immediately see the problem over the overlapping of lines, one over the other, which which we will highlight that. So this is the system. You understand here? We have seen the same, but you see, octave. This system does not generate accurate octave. Di 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 di. La si do ré, la si do ré. Mi fa dièse, sol la. Yes, si do dièse. To have one tone and one semitone. Yes, and when you go backwards, do ti da dum. Okay, so the fifths are good, but the octave in this system are not always accurate. And so you understand how it will evaluate, because when they will have polyphony, they will hear that they have to do something with their signs to adjust. And this is the beginning of the evolution of the scale in Western music. But first, I want to insist over the genius of this invention. These are unambiguous signs. In fact, just one sign for everything. With one sign reversed and everything, you have the whole scale. The whole from C sol grave until do dièse. It's very large. So not at all like Boëthius. You know Boëthius and the signs Boëthius has transmitted coming from the table of Alypius, the Greek way of writing music. The Greeks invented signs to write music. They have more than 70 signs who were actually markers of the measurement of a string. So places in a string, depending on the modes you construct on the strings. They have 4 signs and even only 1. So it's a completely other way of thinking. It's a single sign, only 4 signs, even 1 single sign to write all the music. A single sign because sound is continuous. It's an approach to signs sound based on interval, and it's a new form of writing. Let us remember the Carolingians were deeply reflecting on writing and of signs, and so much that they invented also a letter, the Caroline, a way of writing languages. It's an approach that insists on the inner dimension, on the mental image we have with us, and with us, we have within us. And for example, of what it would take to invent, just think, how would we do to write perfumes? That's the kind of problem they had. How would we do to invent signs to write perfumes? But this is sound, and they have constructed mental image of sound, and thus they can write sounds. Perfume, this would be the problem to write perfumes. And it's an approach that emphasizes the autonomy of sound and their rationality, independently of the measure, and particularly independent of the measurement of a vibrating string. So here, with an entirely different way of thinking from the Greek, and conceiving music and the world, they even provide us solfege exercises, ear training exercises, ad exercendum, so these are the first organized solfege exercising, aware of exercising in the history of music. Tritos, so their names are tritos, the first, second, fourth, and fourth. dee, 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 etc. So just to exercise your ear with the sign, and you see these are the Dacian sound, and in this manuscript we have also the pneumatic writing that's what that came to complete this. So the octave which are not in tune will of course pose a problem in the layering in line in polyphony, along with the issue of layering the fourth. We'll come back to it. And this is the origin of the emphasis on the octave, I just said. And at this point, the proportional Greek approach and the Dacian approach are brought together. They had the proportional Greek, so diapason, diapent is a fifth, and the proportion 2-3, diatesaron 3-4, and diapason 1-2. And in this treatise, the Scholica Kyriadis, the second, is the first time in the history of music where they realize how to join the Dacian signs, so the organization of the sounds that you have in your head with the proportions of the Greek. So I mentioned it. So it's brilliant. It's brilliant. We can anchor it in an anthropology and in a cosmology. I won't tell much about it. Well, I go perhaps a bit quicker. If we have time, we'll come back to sing all this. We can anchor this in an anthropology, and we have a clue, which I propose to you. C, T, and S. These are the three letters, okay? Plus an E, which becomes transfixus when it is altered in another way. So, plus a T, which is a to yacens, so a T lying, and which is half H, which is spiritus, which is breath, spiritus. And we find, the T as sign of the cross is very familiar to these people. For instance, here, the Te igitur is the beginning of the canon of the Mass. Te, you see, the Te is done as a cross. So you feel that there is a theology behind this writing, which I will not develop here, but I simply want to point it out, that this thinking places Christ at the heart of a conceptual effort to link with, a few centuries later, the idea of the one and the multiple. You see, we said one, and you have the multiple of all the sounds. 3 centuries later, we have this. Christ is as the center, the verbum incarnatus, and the one and the multiple. It's the same way of thinking behind this, the same theology, and the principle of all things visible and invisible, the light here, and here the sound and the light, but it's the same way of looking at images. And behind this, there is John Scotus Eriugena. So I just say it. It would be another conference to explain it, but there is something to link here. So I come to the lines now. We have the signs. Where do the lines come from? We find them in Boëthius. Boëthius, Annius Severus Boëthius, he was a scholar, a statesman who lived in Ravenna in the 5th century, and he translated Aristotle, and Aristotle logic in Latin, and he made in Latin a synthesis of Greek knowledge on mathematics and music, and also the science of proportions. And he bequeathed to Latin-speaking Europe the treasure of knowledge of that the Carolingian and in the following 2 or 3 centuries reflected upon and developed into their own conception of the world. And it was already Boëthius, but not in a too clear way, that proposed lines for the chords. And more important, it's uncertainly whether Boëthius himself glimpsed the illustration, because the oldest manuscripts we have are Carolingian. So did Boëthius really think of these lines? It's not so obvious. But in the Enchiriadis treatises, we know it because it's explained. The lines explicitly represent the strings of a stringed instrument, and the strings are already tuned in this kind of a chord in the crwth, which is the instrument, the Irish instrument that was used at the time, plus two chords, 2 open string for resonance. So they said either nervi, as they say, so the chords, or fistula. So they say it can be also the image of the pipes of the organ. This is, they explicitly say, these are the lines. And so we enter in the magic of writing, tied to imagery. It says writing, but it's not alphabetic, it's something iconic. Because these lines, which are in tune, and which sound, and the signs are here to tell us how they sound. These lines become the staves on which one can write. And so they write the syllables on the lines. And it reveals the malleability of the image, which is tied to writing. And this is very important, I think. And then, other problem, the direction of the line, especially in which direction should the line be placed. Boëthius' string, he put the treble, he puts it below. And he puts, here, the treble is placed above. It's our way. So one must have also forged for this writing another concept, the notion of high and low that can correspond to the sound, the pitch of sound, which they name altitudo sonorum, high and low, in French, hauteur de son. The concept of pitch, more precisely high and low, is fundamental. It introduces a visual element into sound that is simply audible. And we are accustomed to it, especially in the Latin domain, because we speak of hauteur. Anglo-Saxon use pitch, but we both have high and low to describe sounds. Everyone knows it is not obvious. Why is the high registers at the right of the piano, for instance? Some music beginners are confused, and it is necessary to help them to fall in their body where the resonants are in the head or in the chest. And so high and low oppose together in pairs. Sharp is something that is, high and low constitute the measure object as unified and continuous, and they allow us to introduce numbers because they have conceptualized high and low opposing to each other. They can measure something because it's not the visual element becomes here essential for writing and also for measurement. Sharp is qualitative. It's in the ear. High and low is quantitative, and it's visual at the same time, and this is important. So it is a special kind of measurement that does not fall under the senses, as the student of the Scolica says. How are the note of musicians known to have an aforementioned measures, though they are placed neither under the eyes nor under the touch? So altitudo sonorum is something you have in mind. The Greek measured sounds based on the length of the strings. Here they are dealing with vocal sound, a sound itself tied to support that is not physically a physical string, but a human body. And the Greek measure the string, which furthermore happens to be sound. Here they start from the sound itself on equal term with sight. They start from the sound itself on equal term with sight, which Boethius completely rejects. Boethius does not have confidence in sound. And sight allows for a precision that the ear lacks to the ear of for boys. Here, they trust the senses, and in general, they trust the human body as the bearer and as the place of the logos, of the presence of the logos within them. It is part of the shift I told you before. So, the pitch of sound, yes, they measure, and the pitch of sound was someone present in the way of gnomes. Dominus dixit ad me. This is the introit of Christmas Eve. You see at the sign that there is something of the high and low. But here, high and low is conceptualized. And here it is measured. Not in the pneumatic writing. There is the idea of pitch, and especially in the so-called long style, and so we are in the same place as the place where they do the Dacian notation, around the place. But here it is not measured. Let us also see this kind of music writing that rejects high and low. Eos kios kepephanenimin, evloimenos oerkomenos, en onomatikiriou. You see, it's also high and low, but in the writing, they don't want high and low. So the idea of carving a staircase, this is something that is generally to be found, whether ascending or descending. It is not unique in the Latin or in the West. We find this even in China. But this does not give rise to a concept that allows writing. That is a visual metaphor accompanying sound. So I won't go here in the details. It's another lecture. How did they forge the concept of altitudo sonorum. Just know that John the Scot, which we have spoken of, is the important figure of this conceptualization. And know also that this concept of altitudo sonorum is tied to a very original view of the cosmos. There, I think, you have the missing link between Ptolemy and Kepler, which I know you know. You have to go through Scott Erigen and the music of the sphere, the harmony of the sphere, and the conceptualization of altitudo sonorum. Just know it. It would be another conference, but just know it, and I think it's important. So let's sing. Altitudo, yes, a visual. And so they invent a new type of image, a diagram, and so you know it. So I chose that one because it's not exactly the text you are used to, but I know that you know this. So we can, okay, so, and you know the words, Rex Celi Domine, d'accord? So, King, Lord of the heaven, and so the text is not clear. And so, because there are different texts according to different manuscripts, and you sing a complete text that comes from another and later manuscripts. So we have here the first text, and it's not liturgical, and it is important. It is not thought to be in a miss. So, could it be to accompany a king or an emperor? Perhaps. It could be coherent. Shall we sing it? So, perhaps the first line? Or perhaps you can do it already. Can you do it? Or yes, half and half. Yes, you do the high, and you do the lowest one. Yes. Okay. Do you want to do it another time? It sounds perfect. Or we can mix. You do that one, and you do the high one. Yes? Okay. That's beautiful. No, really. And it's the first polyphonic example we have in the whole history. So it's moving. But the consequences. I will only mention time, because now time is measured through the syllables. I will mention space. I just mention it because it's something else, but the notion of space, spatium, the spatium sonorum, the space, the idea of a space of sound is in these treatises. So it's very important in the history of the notion of space. Numbers, because they will, when you have all this, when you have this in mind, you will divide the tetrachord, the monochord, like that. And so you come to measures that are the same interval, but that become smaller and smaller. And this is in the Scolica in Kyriadis. So the violin in the string, but it's the first time. This is Boëthius, he just measures the monochord, and he says it's very difficult. And it just measured 4, 2, 3, the first numbers. This is what they come to. So something else with numbers and with space. So I just show you this description, and I know you feel that it will be developed in the history of science. And so also the relationship between sound and music, I just say that in their minds, in these treatises, they talk about praise. It's not a question of expressive music. In their way of thinking, they put the words in relation to the objective harmony of the world. And so it's praise because the words are related to the truth. And so what does it mean to sing in connection with nature, with the world, whose heart is radically transcendent and unknowable? And this is what they are practicing. So this is a fundamental chapter, quite little known, so it is tied to the reorganization of the world as well as to the anthropological reorganization brought to Christianity. So I just say it, it would be another lecture, but I just say it. And you may have heard of Karl Popper. Yes, it's a historian of science, but I like this quote because he says what I think. Polyphony, like science, is peculiar to our Western civilization, and like science, it does not seem to be of Greek origin. It is possibly the most unprecedented, original, indeed miraculous achievement of our Western civilization, not excluding science. So, but I think I have hinted, I have not developed this, but I have hinted to things that could develop the Popper's thought. So I would like just to finish with this. When did they sing Polyphony? And I would like to end with you and go with you in Rome. In Rome, in 843, June the 15th. It takes place in a particularly tense political context, which I will not go into detail here. The emperor's son came to see the Pope in Rome, and we have an unusually detailed report of the music that was sung there. And it's extremely rare to have something like this and something so precise. Because the important thing is not artistic, it is political. In the procession that accompanied the king, there were highly learned Greeks, edoctissimus Grecos, Greek singers, who responded, and so they decantantes. You see, they're singing and chanting. The Latin words are canentes, those chanting, and decantantes is responding within the chant. Cum dulci sonis aundem. So we know also, it sounds very soft sounds. And we know that they sung the Imperatrix Laudes, So the text we know from the beginning of this conference. And the text, the result is very soft sounds. And now we know also that in Byzantium, it is an imperial secular context, not in the clerical one of the Church of Hagia Sophia. You know Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. But the Byzantine emperor was accompanied by organ. The emperor, not in the church, the emperor. And it is therefore highly likely that these very learned Greeks, who were well versed in what a fourth or a fifth in the Dacian system could be, though they sang, it is very likely that they could sing in polyphony, improvised polyphony, to the fourth and the fifth and the octave, decantantes to the other ones that were plain, in plain song. So I propose that we conclude with welcoming the emperor in polyphony. And we will experiment, because we don't have anything. We will become the Grecos Edoctissimus. And so we are touching here another important question. It is the link between the Latin word and the Greek world, between the Roman Latin world and the Orthodox world, at the very heart of music and polyphonic practice. But that's also another lecture, but just know the problem. And so I propose that we try to become the Grecos Edoctissimus. And I propose we experiment, because we don't know. So, but it fits to polyphony, to improvised polyphony. Kyrie eleison. I would propose first, perhaps only men voices respond, and then perhaps men and women voices, because we will be at the octave, and so we will have already something of a consonance. So I begin. Kyrie, Kyrie eleison. And together, men and women. Perhaps another time to make it very clear, or perhaps even without me, it's not useful. So first, the men voice, plain, and second, answering men and women at the octave. Yes? Your turn. With the men, to have the octave. Again, men. And now perhaps you are chanting. There are horses, there are everybody military in arms and so on. So just go, sing. So men, plain voice, and you chant. And first men, and then together at the octave. Perfect. Now, could we try to the fifth? So first, Kyrie eleison, but second time, some would be Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. Together. Is it possible? First men, and then who wants to? You do the fifth, and you do the same. Yes. We try. We try. We're experimenting. Huh? So first the men. And at the fifth. Very good. Christ. I think it's convincing. I think we can have a more sound, more sing together. Shall we try? Shall we try with Pater de Celis to change something? Huh? Pater de Celis Deus miserere nobis. In fact, I am experimenting with you. There are two possibilities. Or somebody says, Pater de Celis Deus, and here only we have it at the fifth or at the fourth or at the octave. Or Pater de Celis Deus miserere nobis at the whole and answering with a polyphony. I don't know. I think either the two possibilities can be here. What shall we choose? The first one? So, for instance, I begin, Pater de Celis Deus, and you answer at the fifth, yes? You do the fifth, you do the octave, okay? Pater de Celis Deus, Filii Redemptor mundi Deus, Spiritus Sancti Deus, Sancta Trinitas unus Deus. Very nice. And shall we try the fourth? The fourth must be slowly. It must be done slowly to be beautiful. And when you sing to the fourth, you put the finger on a difficulty because we will have a half tone. So you have to adjust. Say the treatises, and the treatises will begin to forge other signs to make new sounds and to get the total chromatism. But it's another conference. Shall we? Shall we try the fourth? So, yes? Yes? You have it? Pater de Celis Deus. Again. Pater de Celis Deus. Very nice. Filii Redemptor mundi Deus. Spiritus Sancti Deus. Sancta Trinitas unus Deus. Thank you. You have become the Ricos Educatissimus.